Circled top left is where the River Brent rises as the Dolis Brook at Barnet Gate. A spring rises from the London clay to feed this pool, and then the Dolis Brook heads east along the Dolis Valley. This video is my first foray into the frozen north of London. Indeed, a mere 500,000 years ago, the Scandinavian ice sheet reached about here, now the northern edge of London. The ice sheet dammed the proto-river Thames, which once flowed northeast to join the Rhine and formed a super river flowing down what was to become the English Channel into the Atlantic. The Thames and its tributaries, such as the River Brent, were turned southeast towards their current alignment. Washed out of the ice were the crushed rocks. It ground down. These now form the gravel terraces that surround much of the river. This little egret's sitting on one. The length of the river from its source is about 18 miles and much of it is accessible. Access has been championed by local activists such as Elizabeth Fitzherbert. The Dolis Brook then heads south through Finchley to be met by side streams such as the Folly Brook. Dolis is probably derived from the Old English word dole, meaning a portion. Next comes the last leap south of the Dolis before it's met by the Mutton Brook to become the River Brent proper. This is the Dolis Valley Viaduct, which at 60 feet tall is the highest overground part of the London Underground system. It was built in 1863 and as part of the first underground system in the world. Maybe there were some concepts that hadn't quite matured, such as putting the track through the tunnel. Another little egret. These birds used to be rare visitors from the Mediterranean. So rare, in fact, that the feathers at the back of their neck used to be worth more than gold. It wasn't until 1996 that they were first recorded as breeding in the UK, and now there are hundreds of pairs. The Middlesex Arms on the longest road in Britain, the A1 to Edinburgh. This is where the Mutton Brook comes up to turn the Dolis Brook into the Brent River. And so this is the first bridge over the River Brent. Now we are following the Brent proper as it bends back west. I should mention that Brent is thought to be derived from the Proto-Celtic word brigant, meaning high one, also a goddess of wisdom and healing. The underground is getting lower. The river here runs through a man-made channel that is spectacularly unlovely, even by the standards of a grey day in December. A fun day out for the undead. The river gathers itself into the Brent Reservoir. Also, following the tradition of navigating by pub names, this is more popularly known as the Welsh Harp. Created in 1835 to store water for the canal system, it is now an SSSI, a site of special scientific interest. Mostly for its ornithology, it is visited by rare wildfowl and warblers. It was popular with naturists and naturalists until the 1930 sunbathing riots. The nude bathing was on private land, but the locals were determined to see off the sexual maniacs and took matters into their own hands. Eventually, nude bathing was outlawed when the private land was taken into public ownership. The Brent discharges towards Wembley Stadium before entering the underworld below Neasden sidings. It's also culverted in concrete below the tube station at Stonebridge Park. The Brent heads west below a golf course. There is no word for my irrational hatred of golf courses, which proves it's not irrational. The Brent turns south for its final and most open stretch as it heads towards the Grand Union Canal. The Wherncliffe Viaduct carries the Great Western Main Line across the Brent Valley. Its 66 feet was erected in 1836 to 37 and was the first major structural design by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. As traffic grew and the rail gauge redefined, the viaduct was widened in 1877. The pillars are hollow and house a bat colony. The viaduct carried the world's first commercial telegraph cable. Here at Hanwell, the River Brent joins the Grand Union Canal, but it's a complicated relationship. You can see that the canal and river Anna branches on a number of occasions as they make their joint way to meet the Thames at Brentford. I like to think of it as the top few inches of the joint waterway are the River Brent, and this is the bit that flows over the weirs and into the natural side channels. Another underground train in case you're not confused enough. Now we're arriving in Brentford. In the house on the right, J.M.W. Turner, Britain's greatest painter, started to paint. So I finally know what irony is. Given the Port of London's industrial heritage, it is perhaps ironic that residential Brentford is one of the few sites where traditional river industry carries on. And so we come to the Brentford of the River Thames, where Julius Caesar may have crossed the Thames and defeated the native Britons in 54 BC. In any event, he didn't think staying was worth the Roman candle and went back to Rome to avoid the English weather.